And outside the box reviews, we are taking a look at the X-Plus Diamond Reissue 30cm Toho monster line, Godzilla 1968. This suit was seen in quite a few Godzilla movies. I believe it made its debut in Destroy All Monsters. It ran all the way through Godzilla vs. Gigan, which is the period of Godzilla movies that really have the most nostalgia for me. So after picking up Varan, I knew we had to have a friend on the shelf. I knew I needed to have at least a Godzilla. And my love for this version of the costume, and the fact that I could start building a little Destroy All Monsters crew with these two, led me down the rabbit hole of picking up this one. It also doesn't hurt that it was a more recent re-release and a little easier to get off Big Bad Toy Store. So let's take a closer look at Godzilla here. Now, if you're not super familiar with the history of Godzilla, you have to remember that this costume was the era where he was a hero. He was no longer a villain. You no longer even had scenes in the movies of him terrorizing Japan. He showed up, it's because he was going to kick some evil monster's butt. So the look of Godzilla has kind of softened a little bit since he originally appeared and was a menacing figure. So he has very big eyes, big black kind of Cookie Monster eyes. I always felt like this is the Cookie Monster look for Godzilla. It's got the little pug nose. We have some great scale detail. I love all the different little layers to the scales they crafted in here. The teeth are all individually sculpted, a nice pink mouth there, the tongue's even detailed out. A higher level of gloss in there, plus on the eyes to really bring out that it's a wet area on the character. Going down the back of the head, of course this is a Godzilla with no ears, but we do have the row of fins starting up at the top of the head, jumping up in size here on the back. Some of the biggest center row fins here, big puffy back fins, the very tiny row on the side. Now, unlike the Varan figure, I'm not seeing any holes there in the neck where the suit actor would have seen out of, but it is nice and wrinkly, representing how it would look in the film. Baggy around the head area there. They gave Godzilla a very, very appropriate pose for this era of the films. He's got the one arm up and the other one kind of down, this defensive move. I really like this. I think it gives the statue a lot of character here and really elevates it. A lot of these figures from X-Plus I've seen tend to have the hands in a more static pose or a more expressionless pose, and I really just like how fun this looks. You can see here it's really bunched up the way the suit would be. A lot of bunching here at the elbow. At the four claws here, a really nice paint job on the claws, bringing a great different tones of browns and grays in there. The body itself looks great. It's in charcoal gray, but there's some lighter areas that really bring out the overall texture. The scales are sculpted really nicely in here. They have a nice depth to them that I love. A smoother area down the center there. Get baggier here around the crotch where we would need more mobility in the suit. I already mentioned the puffy spines, but you can see just how puffy they are here in the back. And we go down to the tail. Once again, another area where you had to blow dry the butthole of Godzilla to make it soft enough to stick the tail in. It sounds so wrong, but that's what you had to do with X-Plus. And I must admit, it was a little harder to get this tail on than Varan's, though I already knew with Varan that you had to freeze the tail, and I honestly didn't put this tail in the freezer for too long, and just really tried to just heat up the back section and stick it in there, and it worked decently. It was just a little bit of a pain. And you do have to be careful when you're putting it together, these two fins. You have the one last large fin on the tail and the fin up here on the body, and you just want to make sure you don't rub any paint off trying to get those two together because they do basically touch when it's all assembled. Actually, I think I had it just off to the side, so now I moved it back where it's actually supposed to be and lined up, but they're still almost touching. But I love how they're kind of floppy looking as well, like they were in the film. We continue looking at the little spines diminishing in size. The tail's very segmented looking, and it's kind of a shorter tail, stubby here at the end. It almost goes perfectly straight back, so he is a bit of a shelf hog. And then a very, very flat bottom. Definitely a tail designed to be dragged around. You can see it kind of bunches up here where it falls down. So a very kind of static dragged tail look, but I like it. Going on the legs, more great detailing in the scales, and then we have the three-toed feet, which I always thought was weird when Godzilla had 3 toes and then 4 fingers. I always thought that was kind of strange, but really nice detail on the feet. No detail on the bottom, but of course it's the statue, so you wouldn't really see that anyway. And just like with Varan, there are some seams. You can kind of see seams at the knees just a little bit. Obviously we have the tail seam here as well as the one a little further down. But overall, I don't think the seams are too noticeable, and the detail on this thing is spectacular. For a size comparison, here he is next to the Varan figure, and they're basically the same height, which they should be. I have heard some X-Plus figures in this line tend to run a little short, something to do with the way the figures are actually produced off of model kits or statues done beforehand, but these guys look really nice together, and I kind of hate that I'm wanting to go down this Destroy All Monsters path, because I think that's a total of 11 different kaiju I would need. to assemble that whole crew. And same comparison I did with Varan, but it feels apt here. The vinyl bank from Diamond Select, and really works well to have two Godzillas next to each other, and I think it's very apparent the extra quality that goes into X-Plus. You can see the overall shininess of the Diamond Bank, the lack of depth in the scales there, and kind of the odd looking face as compared to X-Plus's figure that is absolutely beautiful. Trendmaster's Godzilla, which had at one point been my largest Godzilla figure until I got the bank. Then I got the giant one from the 2014 movie afterwards. And if I drop my camera way down, you can see him compared to the 1968 version of Godzilla from Bandai Creations. And the Bandai Creations figure I like. I think it's not a bad representation, but definitely a huge gap in quality between these two. And while I was a little lukewarm on Varan, I am so glad I took a further step down this rabbit hole and picked up this Godzilla figure. I think he's absolutely spectacular. The painted detail, the sculpted detail, the pose, there's not much, if anything, I could think of on this figure that I don't like. I said with Varan that I think picking out these kind of X-Plus figures, you gotta pick the ones that make you happy just by what it is. You have to pick the right characters, the right kaiju, and while there's no difference in quality between Varan and Godzilla here, Godzilla makes me so much happier just by the character himself. So this piece gets a very high recommendation from me. I am super excited to have it in my collection. I've already gone ahead and ordered my third X-Plus figure, and that'll probably be in my hands before this review ever makes it onto the internet. And if maybe having a full Destroy All Monsters crew is a little unrealistic, I at least really want to get Anguirus and Rodan. I know Rodan's getting reissued by Diamond later this year. Anguirus was supposed to, but he wasn't at Comic-Con with the rest of them, so I'm not sure if he's still in the plans, but I really hope he is. Make sure you check me out on Instagram, username Outside the Box Reviews, where I took a bunch of pictures of this guy and had to stop myself from taking more. Also follow me on Facebook, link below. And until next time, this has been their Outside the Box Reviews Giant Monster Mania. Stay tuned for more to come.